during your time in DC, you mentioned working at the Postal Service, and then you became a part of the DC government. So one of the things you did was have a rather remarkable trajectory. Could you describe that trajectory in DC government?
Unprecedented. It's never been done before, and it hasn't been done since. And that is the rise from a GS5 to a GS18. Unprecedented, to include 10 years on the mayor's cabinet.
And the GS5 to GS18, are those similar to federal government
Yes.
rankings?
Yes.
Was this, what was it like to be able to live through that trajectory, especially given that you were one of the first African-American employees you mentioned being given any opportunity in the DC government?
In simple terms, hard work. But realistically, I convinced myself early on that I should do all I could to encourage other black professionals to come into the department. We were not properly represented back then.
Which department?
Sanitary engineering. And as a result, I did all I could to be influential, even at this low grade, as the first African American engineering inspector that they ever had. But I didn't stay there long, because 3 years later, we had the riots in '68 following Martin Luther King's murder. And April the 5th, the next morning following the burning, I decided to go and visit my director of the department. And of course, there was no government activity that day because of the riots. But somehow or another, I made it down to the district building and walked into his office and asked him, could I be of any help? The Department of Sanitary Engineering involved the distribution of water, the collection of sewage, the collection of solid waste, trash, garbage, and whatever, and the construction of all the facilities that the department needed, such as the sewers, both sanitary and storm, the pumping stations, the wastewater treatment plant at Blue Plains. All of that was a part of sanitary engineering, and that's what sanitary engineering is. And the director was in his second week of the job, because the previous director, prior to the riots, prior to the assassination, had just retired. And I had a feeling that this new director, who was the assistant director, or deputy director at the time, before Mayor Washington promoted him to the director of the department, I thought he didn't have an idea of what to do. And my feeling was that Mayor Washington was going to rely heavily on this guy to begin to stabilize the community, wherever. And so I played a role in that. And along with the police department and the fire department, we organized teams to clean up behind the riots after things settled down. And that was 3 or 4 days afterwards. And we began cleaning out buildings, clearing sidewalks where buildings had fallen down, sewers had become blocked up. I mean, it was a mess. And I was right in the middle of that, representing that department. We were successful in getting things cleaned up, but not fast enough, because a lot of the buildings were hazardous, walls falling. So Mayor Washington was very concerned about just how deep we would get into the cleaning up of these 3 riot-torn areas, 14th Street, 8th Street, and U Street. But we got through it, and things began to settle down.